Hello. A few points I'd like to address. The first point is this idea of personality. And in my instance, it is one big loop that has sort of a center here, and a center here, and a center here, and then an inner loop that is one and equal that connects them all. And through my perceptions and my practices and my experiments, I've come somewhat familiar with how it works and what may be done with it. Now, the point of Hitler in particular, I will address the general reasons first. First, when anyone moves from one physical body to another through the process of quote-unquote reincarnation, parts of them are lost, parts of them are kept, and then parts are added to. But the core will always remain the same. And in this, even through the process of rebirth, one must accept and allow this point to have always existed. Okay, that means even though I was this personality, I was that personality, historically was a different name. Realistically, truthfully, honestly, I was never that personality. I am not the personality people perceive me to be. I have always been this newness that cannot be described because there's nothing to relate it to. That's what makes it new. It's not just simply something old rehashed to look new. It is actually new, something that has never been experienced or encountered before. That is new. Now, I'll speak on Hitler, and then I will speak on perhaps my personal experience with Hitler. Okay. Through reading the Destiny interviews, it is obvious Hitler found himself to be one to God, whatever he conceived that to be, because it is his word. And he noticed a certain wrongness about society. And then he went about to change it. Okay, the point has been made that Hitler cared for his people. Now, who are Hitler's people? Well, coming from Austria, his people were first and foremost by name Austrians. Genetically speaking, he was Germanic. Now, almost all of Europe is at least in part Germanic. From Portugal, at least Western Europe, to Germany, Poland, Czechoslovakia, Austria, parts of Italy, and then you have the Slavs and the Mediterraneans. And then what's left of the Celtics and the Gaelics. Okay, so Germanics are the Goths and Visigoths, the Lombards, the Franks, the Angles, the Saxons, the Huns. All of these people invaded Europe about 2,000 years ago and genetically took it over. Okay, so assuming Hitler was there for his people, the Germans, the Germanics, and not say the Austrians or the national Germans, one must question what he perceived this race to be. Because, for instance, he promoted a blonde hair and blue-eyed Aryan physical expression. Now, Hitler himself did not have blonde hair or blue eyes. So, why did he not change himself in order to fit this perception? Or why did he single this perception out of actually that being the Aryans that went to Northern Europe and the Germanics, who were the dark-haired, dark-eyed, hairy people? And as one who is self-honest about being Germanic, one must be self-honest that if one is there for the Germanic peoples will not be harmed in what is done. Okay, so assuming he accepted and allowed that there were Germans in other countries besides the country Germany, he had to accept and allow a certain collateral damage to his own people in order to bring about what he wanted. So in the bombing of Britain, Germanic peoples were going to die. In the bombing of France, Germanic peoples were going to die. In the bombings of Austria, Germanic peoples were going to die. In the bombing of Poland, Germanic peoples were going to die. That is one point where he is placing something above the idea of Germany. Because Germans were affected negatively by his direct actions, direct and indirect actions. Okay. Secondly, Hitler was not creating a new system in blaming the Jews for the problems. This had been going on for practically 2,000 years. In Europe specifically, there was the Inquisition. They got blamed for the Black Plague. They got blacklisted completely. So he was simply carrying on the tradition of blaming the Jews for the woes of the country. But it wasn't only Jews who suffered in the concentration camps. Homosexuals were there. Soviets were there. Germans who disagreed with him were there. So it was not about eradicating Judaism or the Jewish population specifically. It was about eradication specifically. And many Russians have blonde hair and blue eyes. So it was not about genetic purity either. Next, by being self-dishonest about one's goals and the means one uses to reach the goals and what one calls these goals, Hitler allowed himself to enter a two-front war, it was the downfall of World War I Germany and was the downfall of World War II Germany. Hitler made treaties that he did not keep, which is not only Hitler, of course. America is very good at that. But the point is Hitler at this time. He made treaties with the Soviets and broke it. He made treaties not to invade Poland, that he only wanted the Sudetenland of Czechoslovakia, that he was going to stop with Austria, and it was a lie each time. And in creating a two-front war, Hitler not only brought death and destruction on himself, but the German people, the Germanic peoples, the non-Germanic peoples, each individual country that he invaded and claimed as his own, had to face the wrath of the West being put into this war, because it was Hitler that declared war on the United States. The United States didn't declare war on Germany until after Hitler declared war on Germany, because Hitler saw himself as an ally to Japan, and because America declared war on Japan, Hitler declared war on America. Big mistake. Which Americans were full of German peoples. They should have been his ally if that was his goal. Now, some of the repercussions of Hitler's actions again show that, in all honesty, he was not looking out for the best of the Germanic peoples. One, the Cold War occurred, which caused the partition of Germany. It caused the partition of Europe, and a further separation and a polarization that is not the product of oneness and equality and self-honesty. He allowed the creation of the State of Israel because of what was occurring in the concentration camps and the images that came from them of the skeletons standing on the gates, the fences, waiting to be rescued, gave people the notion that Israel deserves to be a nation. And so far, no good. Israel has simply been another point of polarization, a point of war and conflict, and shows the hypocrisy of the Jews in the first place. Now, if Hitler is to be admired, one must question what one admires about him. It has been said that he had an exclusive form of love, and therefore he represents the greatest evil, which is exclusivity. Now, one may say he did not even have love for himself, because as he saw himself as the Germanic people, he did not trust the Germanic people. From the accounts shared, he was a paranoid man, and if nothing else, he trusted the people around him to be as him, which was willing to kill, willing to overthrow, willing to be violent. And so he did not have an acceptance of many people. Hitler certainly knew how to energize a crowd. He knew how to speak to them and tell them what they wanted to hear, because none of the promises that he made came true with him as Hitler. He encouraged the burning of books, which at the time, to me, is a travesty. If the information was incorrect in those books, and there was absolutely nothing useful, who needs them? And in today's day and age, people are practically burning books through the use of technology. However, that technology was not available to people back in that day. So the point of burning books was removing that information practically completely. It wasn't transferring the knowledge and information. It wasn't harvesting that which is useful from that which is not useful. It was simply eradicating it. The removal of the written arts and the spoken arts is one of the signs of despotism, because one is not able or willing to hear an opposing point of view. In a world that is best for all, that is unacceptable. I understand that what I know of Hitler and his experiences and expressions of himself in this world are mostly due to the history books and that which was chosen to be shared, that which was chosen not to be shared. Which brings me to my next point. It is evident at Destiny that certain interviews have been withheld. In particular, the second interview of Hitler on Earth has been missing for 4 years. That is no longer about needing time. That is a deliberate point of omission. Same with some of Mikey's videos and other videos and whatnot. Certain points are brought up and then never addressed. This is what the current system does. The current system creates gaps and loopholes so that it may continue itself. That is why the money system is based on a credit system, because the money doesn't actually exist, it has yet to be created, and therefore it is perpetuated. And so it is with the Destiny material. It is omissive on purpose, and therefore a self-perpetuating system. It is one and equal as this system. It is not in the system, but not of the system. It is in and of this system. Because control is what is sought. A certain point that one must face is, I have nothing to go here, and I have something to go here. So if I'm going to move forward, I must go where there is an opening. However, if one is self-honest, one will understand that nothing is also an opening. And it is only through nothing that one can actually pass through. And so these points of omission or nothing are actually the points that are usable. I keep myself to myself because I do not want to face this world all at once, and if I do, my impression is that the world as a whole will not allow me to experience and express myself to the point of where I am able to take responsibility. Now, what that means is I am not willing to take responsibility for something I haven't done. And if people are going to make me answer for what I have done, then they in turn must answer for what they have done, one and equal to all things. Having one as the scapegoat, as that which is blamed for all things when all have participated, one and equal, is to not be self-honest. Are there things I have to answer for what I've done and not done? Yes. Will there be anything when I am done? No. Because if the process of self-forgiveness is enough for me, it is enough for anyone. And anyone who does not accept and allow the process of self-forgiveness and self-correction to take place, and therefore alleviate the need for forgiveness, then they are the ones who have yet to face the points within themselves. It is not me, it is them. And those points I'm not willing to stand up for. I'm not going to stand up for someone else's choice to fall short of oneness and equality. Because nothing has been done does not mean one is to blame. It means everyone is to blame. And if one is to be equal to life in order to make it through anything and everything, anyone who chooses the point of death or destruction is not one and equal to life, and therefore not allowed to make it by their own choice. It is the old system that wants to place blame, that wants someone to take credit for what has happened. I just don't care. I do not care about taking credit for the good or the bad. I simply do not consider good or bad. I just choose not to judge. There are certain things that judge themselves, and it appears that judgment is carried out, but what it is simply the end of the system. It is not death because it was not alive, and therefore death is not meted out, simply self-expression. Now, through self-investigation, I have found that Aside from what I tell myself, there's that which others tell me about myself, whether they are aware of it or not. Through what one says or doesn't say, through what one does or doesn't do, the position of the body, the look in the eyes, the tone of the voice, all of these things are indicators of where one stands in any one point. And when the point comes to me, that is the point I look for. Because if I'm living in a group, even as society is a group, there are certain things that in a group are unacceptable that one might find acceptable when one is alone. That doesn't mean the one who's alone is wrong. It simply means adaptation. Now, one thing I've noticed about myself is I take into me anything and all things, sometimes on a very subconscious level, but in a way that I can somewhat be aware of it. I just simply am aware of it slipping in, and I accept it. And in this, I've had to come to certain points of realization. One, there's nothing I can take into myself that will defile me. Two, there's nothing I can take into myself that is not myself. No matter what one consumes their self. And what the body does is it breaks down what it consumes and uses that to build itself back up. And so, with the point of Hitler, through asking myself about this point and how he has viewed himself as God and he wants to do this and do that, one point we have in common is the point of self-expression. And this sort of no-holds-bar point of my way or no way. And in that he calls himself God. Well, I can understand. So, when retrospecting my childhood and where I am now and what it has accumulated to, I see myself as having set myself up to be a trick or a trap. Someone like Hitler as a demon god would have still had certain parameters to exist as. That is, attraction to suffering, to one might call it darkness, but is actually light. And vice versa, what is perceived as light but is actually darkness. And as a demon, the point of consumption would have been there. And the point of control. Okay, me being myself, and I can see myself having put myself in that position, at least somewhat aware of what was going on. And so what I did was, I made myself the most appetizing and appealing demonic point there was, whether I was aware of it or not. The suffering I put myself through, the rebelliousness, the uncontrollability I accepted and allowed myself to portray, the intensity with which I portrayed myself, all would have set a beacon for anyone who is looking for something to sustain themselves for a very long time. And then, when that point came, and the point of control was assumed, that was the point that one was tricked, because there is no control. And from the point of view of oneness and equality, one is deluded through the idea of control. And in this, I was able to absorb that entity, break it down, and make it part of myself, so that that entity no longer exists as itself, but as myself, along with everything else I've ever absorbed as myself. So it is simply me. And that's what I do with everything. I did that to the Christ. I absorbed it into as myself, and as myself, as I am an amplifier of myself naturally. So, and the Christ entity is an amplifier in and of itself. We found that point of oneness and equality, and boom, as one and equal, we are amplified. Now, as being one with life and things one might call ephemeral or ethereal in this world, that is, the ideas such as life, light, love, truth, the expression of this amplification is not always what one may consider practical. But from my point of view, it is expressing the most practical things for what is here. For example, the world may be in dire straits, yes, but basically, if I am in dire straits, I am in no position to help anyone. And in that, the basicness of self-amplification means get to the heart of the matter, get to the core of it, get to self, and figure out what is going on. Okay, so from myself, I am working on and considering myself first, when actually I am considering myself last, because that which I want to bring forth is more important than what I am as an individual. So therefore I must face myself as an individual and fully implement newness as an individual before I can actually do it anywhere else. It is not a point of abuse. It is a point of self-honesty and understanding it takes a doctor to heal the sick. You know, the sick do not heal the sick, the blind do not lead the blind. And whenever there's a point of unawareness of my equality and oneness, then that is that which I must face before I can face anyone else. And so yes, I keep to myself. I perform my experiments, my thought experiments in my secret closet as described by Jesus, in that, you know, he says, go into your closet and pray to your Father which sees in secret. And so that is what I use. I use it as a point of no one else is able to see it but me. And that way the repercussions and the reactions and the effects of my experiments are not shared. Because if I don't know what's going to happen, and I'm me, then those around me who do not know themselves, how will they react? You know, how would they be able to handle this? So I keep it to myself. And I have been preparing the sharing for quite some time. However, finding someone who is able to handle reality, both seen and unseen, not as a religion, but as the truth, is non-existent in this world. And so I keep it to myself. And if this world, while I am here, is never able to receive it, I will never share it. Because there's no point in giving someone something and then they, you know, knock it on the ground, only for me to pick it back up and move on. There's just no point. I will save myself the trouble from doing the extra work and simply move on. Now, as far as access to this place, at first it somewhat bothered me, but now perhaps it is because I am not this current system anymore, that I may access it except as the understanding of the system. But my actual core nature as a system does not exist. So there is that point of inequality that I'm not able to address. Because although, you know, this flesh works systematically, the fact that it can do its own thing shows it is not a system of control. If the only group I ever participate in, one and equal to, is this human physical body, then I will be content. I will be satisfied because I am participating in a group where it takes cooperation and self-expression is allowed. That is what I'm asking for. That is what I'm seeking. I don't need that from anyone else. I would be selling myself short if I said I did. If others are willing to participate me equal to me, and that we may be all equals, then I will accept that. But until that happens, I am content with realizing myself and implementing myself and cleaning myself out and filling myself up and doing whatever it takes in order to maintain myself with or without another. Because the object of a group is not to maintain a group based on support. The object of a true group is to build each member up to the point of not needing the group and still maintaining the group. In that, I do not find destiny to be participating. It is a continuous process of always more. And that to me is the system. I will not participate in that. I do not care what it means to you or to me, because I know what it means to me. And I don't have to ask myself. I don't have to search myself to figure out what is going on and why. Anyone can repeat what another says. I mean, if that's all you want, then keep up the good work. But if you want someone who can actually speak on their own, then investigate me. Because I've investigated destiny enough to know where I stand as myself compared to destiny as itself. And if the process of exclusion of people or information continues, it will simply be the end of you by your own doing, because the end of that system is coming. There is no more debt. What kind of forgiveness would I be sharing if I still held other people guilty, as far as I'm concerned? And then to encourage others to feel guilty towards what someone else has done is, again, not self-honest. It would, as one who has self-forgiven self, it is only natural that I only accept and allow others who have self-forgiven themselves, and not to perpetuate guilt and debt. No matter what the case. If Hitler were to kill every human on this earth, it would not be a point I have to face. It would be a point he has to face. And therefore, there is nothing I can hold against him or help him out with, because it is up to him. So the point of looking into the future and seeing what is happening or going to happen only works if everything completely stops. Because the point of observation is the point creating the vibration that causes the pictures of the future to appear in the first place. And then once that point of observation has left, that which it was creating leaves also. And as this is, manifested chaos, the perception is useless. Entities have told me that certain things, about the future and about the past, but I only take them into partial consideration because they are a perspective. They are not the actual point that is going to experience the future. They are not the actual point that experienced the past. Observation is a point where you receive everything except yourself. As a whole. Because only in that is one able to actually observe. Everything else is subjective when you implement yourself into and as the observation. And so when one removes oneself from the point of observation, one must use it as a point of reference rather than a point of, this is what's going to happen. And sometimes knowing about the future makes it worse, and sometimes not knowing about the future makes it worse. But the future is just a theory from this perspective. And so, what might happen, what might not happen, is not as important as what is happening. And if people are willing to throw away what is here for what might be, then they are throwing themselves away. And I will not participate in that. What I actually have to say, humans are not the kind of people at this moment to hear me. So, what do? I do my best to speak to them as humans, as earthlings. Because I am an earthling at this moment. And if that is unacceptable, okay, then you find humanity and earthlings unacceptable. Just accept that and move on. Going around and picking this article or that article to talk about is only doing what has already been done. Because even the journalists, they take a headline and then they talk about it. And so you are really in the employ of this particular newspaper or this particular topic. You're not really promoting anything to solve these issues. Or there is no evidence of your corrective application through love your neighbor as yourself. If you're out there building homes or giving away money or doing whatever you feel is necessary to change this world, show the evidence of it. But as is, those who are on the Destiny Farm and those who are close to those who are on the Destiny Farm in the Center of Destiny group, they do not show themselves at all. And yet Mr. Anonymous is told to be killed. The point that really decreases Destiny's credibility to me is the fact that the things that are said, especially by Bernard Poolman, seem to be his own shortcomings. And that everything he says about others is really a reflection on himself. And from this, I gather that there is a mistake. That these points you consider others not to have realized are really points you have not realized and implemented. And if you cannot handle this as simply my point of view, then it shows it as something more to you. The dual message, sometimes Jesus is good, sometimes Jesus is bad, sometimes love is good, sometimes love is bad. And instead of distinguishing between that which is bad called love and that which is good called love, you simply lump it all together and you create two polarities. Another point that makes Destiny lack credibility to me is the law that one must shave their head in order to be equal. The fact that it is a law shows it is of the system. There is no physical law that says in order to do what is best for all, one must shave their head. Now, it is not a point of altering the body or appearing a certain way because, I shave, I plug my eyebrows, things like that, clip my fingernails. If I was to say it was a point of, well, the physical is growing out the hair, so I will accept and allow that, I would allow a unibrow, I would allow long fingernails, I would never shave, and I don't do those things. So I realize that there's something else. I was using the physical as an excuse rather than simply facing the point of shaving the head. And the fact that it is a law that I must obey makes me question what other laws are they making up that one must obey? What is the purpose of this law? And in recognition, I accept that your message is to remove polarity, and yet through the building of this law, you are creating polarity. By accepting, allowing, and promoting this law, you are creating polarity. By saying you have to do this, otherwise you're not equal. Then why was I not born that way? And in that you become what you claim to set out to not be and undo. So if Destiny actually wants to appeal to more than a couple thousand people in a world of 7 billion, there is going to have to be some public relations overhaul. And I'm not saying you can't shave your head. I'm saying don't impose your choice on anyone else, because that is what this system does. This system chooses to obey, and through the mind consciousness system imposes that choice of obedience onto those it is, or those who stand as it. And I will not participate in that. If I want to shave my head, I will. If I don't, I won't. If others feel the same, that is what I encourage. And if that is a point of inequality in your group, then your group is a point of inequality, because the judgment you apply is the judgment applied to you. And if you want to stand as a group and judge as a group, then the judgment will be applied to the group. That is not anything other than natural law. Now, if you actually want to remove polarity, what my suggestion, what my experience suggests is you address things as specific as possible. That way, there is no point that may slip under the radar, that may be quietly accepted and allowed on both sides so that one may support ego or perception. And if you're not able to actually point out specifics and you can only lump individuals into generalizations, then you're missing the point, or you're addressing the system and not actually the individual. If the individual is to take any form of responsibility, you must address the individual. One reason why I feel you do not have what it takes to actually carry this thing through is you are unwilling to move beyond the system. For some reason, it seems it has overtaken your thoughts or overtaken your self-expression, so that it, by making it your enemy, you haven't accepted and allowed it to become you. Because the system destroys and attempts to destroy everything it perceives not to be it, so that only it may survive. And that is the point of destiny, is to remove anything that is not destiny, so that only destiny may survive. It doesn't matter why or how, just as long as it is. And I will not participate in that. One point of inequality that Hitler faced was his own self-declaration. If it is true, no one has to say it in and of themselves. Their self in others will say it for them. That is why I do not care to reveal myself as well, because if I have to do it on my own, it will feel inauthentic. So people can deal with me whether they know my name or not. That is not going to change what I do or what they do, if one is being self-honest and self-responsible. If it does, then they are not being self-responsible. They're blaming someone else, and I will not participate in that. So if you actually have something to say, and not simply something to repeat, I'm listening.